Okay, I'm using a different type of recording software this time. We'll see if it works. I've tested it a couple times and I think it's going to be okay. It has to be different this time because I want to show you the calculator screen, and I can't do that with the traditional software I've been using. So we'll see how this works. So I can't really draw like with this whole setup. Um, and I don't know. Well, so I just have this one that's already been drawn on by some other teacher. But really, this one's about how to use the calculator. So we're probably gonna have to go over this in class a lot anyway. But you'll have this to refer to, and of course, if you're absent, like this will be great. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so this is about how to use the dang calculator and use it for graphing. And it can be kind of frustrating, and it can be kind of, I mean, there's some skills that don't really seem like math. They seem more like computer science or like, just tech instructions. So another thing is if you get super stuck with this, this is a TI-nSpire graphing calculator that, a lot of people use, and you can Google things. You can Google the instructions and that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm just going to go through what you need to do for this unit. It's probably the most calculator heavy thing we do all year. Okay, so first thing is we want to be in the document area. So let me just show you back here. I'm going to start a new page in this because this is not like what things will normally look like on your screen. If when you open up the calculator in the very first place, it might look like this. Like this is supposed to be the main on screen, and you guys have probably gotten in the habit of opening up a calculation page like this in the scratch pad. That has its limitations, which maybe you haven't really come into contact yet too much. But you're going to want, especially when you get into a class like AP Stats, you really are limited by what you can do in the calculator, the graph screens. So I want you to open a document. A document will be able to do more than just the calculate of the graph, but also some functions. Well, long story that I'll tell you in class. It's better to do a document if you can. So according to the instructions on the handout that I just gave you, the notes for today, we're going to go add graph first. So it's a graph in a document page. Okay, let's go back to this. Hopefully you can see all this pretty well in the resolution with the window you're seeing. I have it huge on my monitor that you see me using class. Okay. So then it says to enter an equation, press tab. Oh yeah, this is kind of annoying. So first of all, when I just open a graph page in the first place, I have this little entry line up here where I can enter graph stuff. But once I graph something like, okay, y equals x squared, and I get a graph, and all of a sudden that goes away. I can't like enter a graph information anymore. But if I hit tab, then that comes back. So I can go, tab gets you in and out of this kind of top row screen where you can enter things. All right, so I just entered that f of x equals x squared, but they want you to enter this thing, negative 3x squared plus 2x plus 16. So let me, tab, let me go back, let me change that. Negative, maybe we're going to use that button for negative, 3x squared, what was it? Plus 2x plus 16. Oh gosh, it all went away. Funny. All right, but I remember it now. Negative, because I can't see both things at the same time. Negative 3x squared plus 2x plus 16. And they probably picked this for a reason. It looks kind of gross. And as soon as you hit enter, it's going to graph everything. It's going to graph what it can possibly graph in this window. And this window, this default window, is kind of strange. It goes from negative 10 to positive 10 on the x-axis and negative 6 2/3 to positive 6 2/3 on the y-axis, which seems kind of strange. But that's because they wanted the grid lines to be equal, in terms of the spacing on the x-axis and the y-axis. But the graph the window is not a square, which is why these are not the same sort of width x and y, or the width is not the same as the height in terms of the number of grid lines you see. Well, this isn't the best view of this parabola, which is kind of the point, which is kind of why they wanted you to graph this one, whoever made this handout. One thing we can do, and I'm just going to walk through the features that are in this handout in order. One thing to do is to find a table. If you go Control T, I'm just going to push that on my keyboard here. Or actually, you know what? I'll do it on the calculator. I'll start with this. Control T. I get this. And it splits the window in half. It actually gives me two different windows in the same screen. And I have this little table of values, which is kind of helpful, possibly. And I can arrow up and down in that. We'll talk about this more in class. This is not, this might be helpful. I don't use it a lot, actually. you can set, if you go into the menus, you can set, like, notice how it starts at 0 and it goes up by 1 each time. You can set where it starts and how much it goes up by each time, and you can really edit that pretty carefully if you really need to. I don't really want to see the table right now, so I hit Control T again, and I think it goes away. Control T, goodbye. Okay, great. The biggest I don't know, headache, the biggest skill you're going to learn in this lesson is about how to adjust the window, because this window right now is not the best way we want to view this parabola. We can't really see the vertex. I can't see the vertex. There's a lot of the window that's not really being used. Notice you can see kind of in this part, like, it'd be really great if it kind of looked more like this. There's more features of the parabola I'd rather see kind of more visibly. So there's lots of ways to adjust the window. And it can be, what am I trying to say? I want to try to give you the tools so you can adjust the window as quickly as possible to get the parabola to kind of behave, to get the window to behave as quickly as possible with the fewest number of keystrokes and the fewest amount of thinking, littlest amount of thinking you have to do to get there. So anyway, it's all under this window zoom menu. Let me go back again. I hit menu, and then it's under number 4, and then there's all these different controls to try to change the dimensions of the window. If you ever get lost and want to come back to the home version, you hit zoom standard, and it'll go back to where it is right now. But you can do things like go straight to window settings, and you can manually adjust what all of the edges are. And so again, here we see the -10, +10 for X, and the -6 2/3, +6 2/3 for Y. That's usually really hard to do. You have to really think hard about that, but you could just enter a higher number for Y here, and you might get high enough to see the vertex for Y. This is what I try to tell people, and I think this makes things go kind of quickly. There's a thing down here. Now, I wouldn't call it exactly AI, but it starts with A, which is kind of convenient. This is much older than AI, but there's some kind of algorithm in the calculator. If you pick zoom fit, which tries to predict what you are trying to see, and it's again, it's a really like clunky old version of something that's kind of like AI. But if I hit zoom fit, at least it shows me something. Usually it's better than whatever you were currently looking at. So I get this right here. So between zoom fit and this next feature, I can usually get it to kind of behave the way I want it to. So what I probably want to see in this parabola is probably the vertex and probably the intercepts and all that stuff. And that's all kind of crammed right here right now. So after I get to zoom fit, I can at least see those things. And then if I use zoom fit in conjunction with this next thing, which I'd like, which is zoom box. Zoom box is kind of what it sounds like. You click like 2 corners of a rectangle. It's like a rectangle. Click and drag kind of select, and then it'll take whatever rectangle you just clicked and selected. It will snap to that, taking over the whole window. So I'm going to go zoom box, and I'm going to click right here. Notice it's saying first corner as I move my mouse around. I'll put my first corner there and my second corner kind of here. And notice by doing just that much, it's going to take that and now snap that to fill the whole window. And that's pretty good. That's kind of where I want things to be. So between those 2 functions, and now it's still in zoom box because I haven't hit anything else yet. I'm going to hit escape to get out of that. This is a pretty good window for what I want to see with this parabola. So there's other instructions on here about how you could possibly do that differently, but between zoom fit and then zoom box, that gets you pretty close. The next thing to worry about is how you want to do the decimal settings, because you might want to. We're going to use the graph window to find answers to problems where you're going to actually get numerical answers, and it's going to display numbers on there. I think the best way to do this is probably fix 3. So that, because in this class we always round to 3 decimals. So in this version, and I know you've gone to your calculator screen and you're in the regular calculator screen, and you've gotten it to round the way you want to. The rounding instructions and defaults and settings and stuff for the graph screen are totally separate from that. Notice how it says graphs and geometry at the top of this little window here. So you need to go menu 9 and then fix 3. So let's do that right now. Menu 9, fix 3. Mine was already there. So I do that. So every time it displays a number, it's going to automatically show 3 decimals, anything it calculates. Okay, so here's some things we can use that will produce numbers, which are kind of cool. And this is the first thing we're going to do for what's called analyzing a graph. Finding x-intercepts. Okay, so I wanted to find the x-intercepts of this thing. Are we still in the same graph? The same? Yeah. Most of that stuff, most of the power of what's in this thing that's really helpful is under menu 6, which is Analyze Graph. And the first one that they're talking about in this worksheet is let's find where it crosses the y-axis, the x-axis, where y equals 0. So we're going to call that, that's under 1. They call that 0. Now, for a lot of these things, the first thing they want you to do is kind of say, okay, where do you want me to look for this? Because lots of graphs can have multiple ones of these, right? So this one we know has 2 zeros. So it doesn't just snap to 1, because you might want to find this one, or you might want to find this one. So it's saying, okay, where do you want me to start to look? And I just have to, this is just a vertical lines kind of slider. Slide it to where it's below where you want it to look, and then click, and then slide it to where you want it to go. Stop looking. So like we're basically giving it a window for looking. And I just click somewhere to the right of it. Oh, I never noticed those little U's and H's there. Those are really tiny on a regular screen. All right, anyway, boom, and then it automatically just snaps to that point, and it'll calculate it for me, and it gives me that point there. And it's giving me the 3 zeros of the 3 decimal places, which are zeros, because I asked it, I just did that setting where I wanted to fix 3 decimal places. If I want the other one, I go again, menu 6, 1. But now I'm going to slide over here and go, here's my lower bound of where I want you to look. Oh, those U's and H's are so cool. And here's the upper bound, and it's going to give me 3 decimal places. And for our class, that's enough. That's perfectly what I want. If you don't like where these labels are being placed, you can click and drag them around. You can click and drag around any of this text. It's hard on a handheld. It's kind of easier for me on a computer because I'm using a mouse. But it actually does work the same on your handheld. And so those are those 2 things. Finding the vertex, next thing, we go menu 6, analyze, menu 6, analyze, and then maximum is what this is called. And again, we have this maximum, minimum, or like upper bound, lower bound kind of slider. I click to the left of where I think I see a hilltop, and then I drag, not really drag, I just kind of float over here because I've clicked once. I'm not dragging, I'm just clicking again over here, and it calculates the 3 decimal places where that maximum is. Great, I can write that down. And then this is a totally different feature, the menu or subscript 3 here, finding a y value for a given x value. If I have x and I want to just plug x into a function and find y, that's called trace. I go menu, trace, and I'm just going to hit graph trace. There's some other funky things you can possibly do. We're just really going to use trace, graph trace. And then right now, it just plunks it sort of in the middle of the screen. If I go left and right, notice in the bottom right corner, it just gives me different values. This is almost like the table, but it's not like showing me the list. If I just go left and right arrow, I get different values of the function. And it looks like it's going up by, and it sets this kind of like in an AI way, like it did with the graph fit. It's going up by 0.05 each time, which is kind of interesting. It just decided to do that. But I can type into values. Like say, this is going right now between 1.75 and 1.8. What if I wanted 1.76? I can actually type 1.76, boom, and it'll snap there. It's still going to go up and down. Like the step increase is still 0.05, which is okay. I can reset that if I want. But generally speaking, you're going to probably use this for, I want to know exactly what it is if x is 2.034. Boom, I can type that in. It'll give it to me exactly. That's if I have an x value. If I know x, or if I'm given an x and I want to find out what's the y value. So this is a kind of straight ahead like function. I know the input, what's the output kind of thing. If you have a y value and you want to know the x value, it's a little more tricky. For that, and we can talk mathematically about why they designed the calculator and the coding this way. But if you have the y value, essentially what you have to do is you have to create a horizontal line for that y value and look for the intersection. So the one they're talking about now is, well, what if y was 9? So I'm going to get out of trace. I hit escape. It'll get me out of trace. I want to graph another function where y equals 9. Okay, so to graph another function, I have to get into that graph editor or that graph entry thing again. I hit tab to get back in this window, and this is essentially y equals. So if I go y equals 9, boom, I'm going to get f2 now. f2 is a different function, f of x. Y equals 9, and I want to know where does this function have a y value that equals 9. So now guess what? It's back in the menu 6 for analyze, and I can find intersection. So the first thing it asks for intersection, well, it's kind of simple right now. This can get more complicated if you have more than 2 graphs on the screen. If you have more than 2 graphs on the screen, which I don't right now, I just have 2. If I had more than 2 graphs on the screen, the first thing it's going to ask me is, okay, which 2 graphs are we even talking about? And you have to select those. So this is a little bit simpler right now. But right now, just like the zeros of the max min, it's asking, okay, where do you want me to start looking? I'll start looking here. And where do you want me to stop looking? I'll stop looking here. And it gives me that 3 decimal coordinate stuff again. There's another one down here. If I go in the negative area, if I go menu 6, 4, and I start looking to the left of this one that I see and stop looking at the right, I get the other one. So these are the two that are listed in the key of this worksheet over here, the negative 1.23 and the positive 1.897. Okay. There's some navigation tricks here. I think this is better explained in person, and that's the end of this section. I'll stop right here. I want to make sure that this software knows what I'm doing when I stop. Oh my goodness.